and anything. You caught me off guard. All right, everybody. Welcome to Tell George Live. This is Out North Radio, 106.1 KONR, Anchorage, Alaska. This is George Martinez, everybody, on Tell George Live, the weekly program focused on people, politics, and progress. And at the start of the hour, I want to open up, as per usual, with a little occupation freedom.
Yeah. Sometimes all we need is a spark. Yeah. Set it off. I take money from the rich and invest it in the poor. Been a long time coming, time we settle the score. You can do it for your people, but I do it for your all. And yes, I got mines covered and I never let them fall. When the real hits the fan, son, who you gonna call? Not Ron Paul, more like the honorable River Martinez with a team of superheroes. Walk throughout the land, find my team of super zeros. Add it up, come back with negative indictments of a system that starts out positive enlightenment. Occupy the streets, let's occupy the nation, but don't occupy your mind with false occupation. Occupy the positions when your team falls short. Stand with the accused by occupying the court. Occupy all airwaves, spaces in between. Occupy the undercover and the overseen. But when occupying ain't enough, and we need a next tactic. Combine the global block map and see what happens. We do it for the people, we do it for the movement. Occupy America, that's what we move.
Occupation, that's what they all yelling, but it's gangsta nation. A bankers that be selling our future while the politicians sit back thinking about the next move to scrape the next million off the backs of our children. I'm also telling the story so true that it's never selling. No more lies, occupying time in the minds of my sisters while we strive to survive and realize the lives and pictures of our future life the dimmer. Underneath the shadow they cast and leaving us without dinner. While we all gotta be strapped against the wall. No relief in sight, that's why we stressing to bore. Yo, we bring heat tonight to hear the call. And my suggestion is you heed the call. Occupy government, ain't no either or. We are the ones we've been waiting for. I'm free, not defined by what I have, but what I give to my community and humanity. I'm free, I know my identity and really don't care what you think of me. I'm free, living my dreams, but with no fear, impossibilities, cause I know they ain't there. I'm free, and you're ready, occupying the streets. This way, nothing ever could be taken from me.
All right, everybody. Welcome to our weekly Monday conversation. My name is George Martinez, and this is Tell George Live, our weekly conversation around people, politics, and power. I'm on the radio, 106.1 Out North Radio. If it's a call-in show, so if you have something that you want to share, I'll give us the topics that I want to be talking about today. But that phone number for a call-in is 222-1061. Once again, that's 222-1061. And I'll try to get you on the air. But you also, if you're tuning in, and you can check out Facebook. I'm live also right now on Facebook. Hey, everybody who's tuning into Facebook. Hey, Heather Anthony. Good to see you. And our other viewers, if you have a question, a thought, a comment, I'll get it on the air. You just type it on our Facebook feed. And that's at George for Anchorage, which is the Facebook page where we live stream. So, hey, everybody. Good to see you all today on this second week of July. And I hope you're having a great day. We're going to have a phone caller. We're going to talk a little bit about homelessness today, continuing to talk about that issue, continue to talk about solutions. And I also want to hear people's perspectives on the Bronson administration's homeless plan for what I call a warehouse on the East Side. So that may not be the most politically appropriate term, but this is my radio show. And when I ran for mayor, I talked about being opposed to warehousing. So I don't want to see big and not successful. I want to see small, successful programs all across our community, and really focusing on dignity, independence, and respect. So we'll get into that. I have a guest speaker coming on in a few minutes. Malua Beck from Second Chance Services is going to be calling in, and we'll have a conversation. So if you have any questions for Malua, have any questions or your thoughts or your ideas around what the city is currently proposing to do with respect to homelessness, if you're an East Side resident and you're tuning in and you have some opinions about this plan, give a call or 222-1061, or just send a message on the Facebook feed and we'll get it on the air. So the other thing I want to make sure that we also are leaving space to talk about is we had a really good conversation last week, an opening conversation around critical race theory. And 2 weeks ago, and on 2 broadcasts ago, we had school board president Margot Bellamy from the Anchorage School Board on the program, and we talked a little bit about the school board's move and language around anti-racism policy at the school board level and the hopefulness around closing some of the equity gaps. So if you have any comments or thoughts about critical race theory, hit us up. I want to know what you're thinking and what you feel about that. And again, my language on this program, for everybody that's tuning in, and you may be this your first time, welcome to the show. It's Tell George Live. I'm George Martinez. But I don't want us to have any conversations around just jargon. I want us to talk about what we mean, why we mean it, just very blunt and directly. I'll give an example. When people talk about critical race theory, they often say, the opposition will often say, this is some sort of an attempt to rewrite American history. Okay, that's a position. So without critical race theory, people who are talking about there's some concern about rewriting American history. My concern as a thoughtful person is the history that we've been given, I recognize, has been limited by those who were able to have inclusion into telling the story. So when we talk about going into education, we talk about uncovering more accurate historical references, when we talk about telling the untold stories of leaders, of community members, of Black folk, of people of color whose contributions have been, quite honestly, erased out of some of the popular history. Well, I see that as accurately telling more of this truth, more of the story, right? That's not to deny others, but it's also to say there's more we can tell. So if you think that we can just be more honest, we can have more thoughtfulness in terms of telling the accurate history, and that's a good thing, well, then you want to give a call and shout that out too. I would love to hear your thoughts. We also talked about land acknowledgement last week, and so I just wanted to shout that out and highlight that and open my program once again with a land acknowledgement, recognizing that I am broadcasting today from Anchorage, Alaska, which is the ancestral land of the Dena'ina Athabaskan, whose stewardship once was and remains today. So we do this. I do this in my work, bring this in my program, and I think it's a good practice to be able to honor and respect the land of the and the people whose land we may happen to be on today. But there are folks who, when they hear critical race theory, they see land acknowledgements, they also think that's somehow rewriting history. The reality is we may be rewriting history to a more accurate historical representation of what happened, not to hold blame, but to be honest so that we know how to move forward together. If you have any thoughts about critical race theory, I'd love to hear them. Post them on the chat. I get them on the thread if we can. But also, again, if you have any thoughts about the proposed homeless shelter on the East Side, let's get into that conversation. I'll have Malua Beck calling me in just a few minutes. We'll get them on the air. But yeah, Jasmine, it's about facts. Let me give you another fact. Go back to this critical race theory and people getting stuck on jargon versus telling the story what it means. Who should be opposed to telling the honest story of Columbus I'll give an example. My son, who's 12, but when he was 10 years old, was in school. And shout out to Family Partnership for those years. My son now goes to the Stream Academy on the East Side. And shout out to all of our teachers. But I remember my son coming home one day. Now, we teach at home. We train at home, and we have critical mindedness, right? So it's not that we just try to indoctrinate our children, and we just try to give them, this is what you should know and why you should know it kind of a framework. We tell them, what do you think about this? How do you hear this? Does this make sense to you? Really thinking about the thoughtfulness about education, but also my son's ability to be critically minded, be relevant, and know how to speak up for himself and for his community. My son came home when they were doing this couple years ago, and they were doing a Columbus unit in school. Now, this unit of this historical unit around Columbus was the version of Columbus that I grew up with, which is necessarily limited. Okay. It's the good version. They came, the Pilgrims, everybody was happy. There was a feast, Thanksgiving, Columbus. And, at least it sounds all some sort of legend, a narrative around that. And obviously Columbus and the Pilgrims very different, but it's this story. It's this language around this is what happened in the past. So my son comes home from school and told us that he didn't get in trouble, but he did push back at the teacher. And we said, well, what happened? And they said that when the unit around Columbus was going on, my son raised his hand in school and said, well, what about the stealing and the killing? What about that they were taking the gold and extracting gold and killing natives, whether it was with infirmity, sickness, or was just straight colonial imperialism? And my son, he had a conversation with the teacher and then came home and told us this. And I high-fived him and I was like, that's right on, because you were critically minded. You didn't just accept what was given to you, and you pushed back with a thoughtful response. And so I asked him, what did the teacher say? And the teacher said, well, George, where'd you learn that from? Okay. So the teacher then asked my son, where did you learn that there was let's say a more accurate historical representation of what happened with Columbus, of the purpose, the intent, or what the indigenous folks experienced? And we referenced a book. So my son came home, told me this, and then I reminded him of this book that we had reviewed where he got that information from. He brought that information back to the teacher the very next day, and the teacher hadn't heard of the book, read the book, understood where my son's disposition was coming from, and slightly began to incorporate new learnings into the classroom. So shout out to the teacher who wasn't closed-minded, to not have that thoughtfulness in terms of their own ability to grow from a young person that they taught. So that's a good thing on behalf of the teacher. But I would want our school district to just have an accurate historical representation of what happened in the past. We don't have to have rose-colored lenses to imagine and to know how great of a nation we are. We're a great country. A great country can withstand disagreement, and it can withstand going back to tell the accurate and often ugly history, to be able to know where we come from and what are the things we need to know to move forward. And so, Heather Anthony, I shout out your comment. In order to focus on where we're going, we need to know where we came from on our journey into the future. We cannot base our future on lies and falsified untruths. Shout out, Heather. Absolutely right on. And let me get a comment on here by Jasmine Smith. Hey, Jasmine, good to see you tuning in tonight. Tell George Live right here on Out North Radio. Jasmine's also a contributor to community radio right here on 106.1. And Jasmine writes, sometimes the truth hurts, but it doesn't make it any less true. We got to come to terms with all aspects of our country's history and know how it has impacted our society, especially communities of color. Tell the truth. Absolutely, Jasmine. I agree 100%. And let me get another comment on here from Heather, who gives us a little more about this Columbus background here. After they feasted, they murdered the Indians. And afterwards, because the Indians did not want to give up their riches, Columbus gave little trinkets to fool the natives, to soften them up, to get what they really wanted, gold. And the reason that could happen, just to be real clear, wasn't that the indigenous folks were dumb at all. In fact, we are now beginning to fully realize the wisdom in traditional knowledge and how we need to have that embedded into our science and technology base. So we're learning that they actually knew a whole lot more than they were ever given credit for, the indigenous folks. But they had no predisposition to the invaders. They were from a disposition where war was fought internally around territory and resources, but had value propositions around honor and dignity also embedded into even those political struggles. What they uncovered was there was no honor and no ability for respect given from the Europeans at that point. They understood that, they didn't understand how nefarious the intent really was. And this all goes back to the intent, the purpose. What we know, at least historically, is that the Europeans came, Columbus and others. The Columbus trip was financed. Columbus was Italian, but he was financed from the Spaniards to go find gold. So when you're exploring to find riches that you can exploit and bring back, anything in your way is likely to be exploited and destroyed. So that's a real honest, accurate, I think, description of a historical truth that we often cover up in nostalgia and some fantasy. So critical race theory, if it means telling the honest truth in schools, well, then I support that, right? If it means honoring the land and the legacy by knowing that a land acknowledgement today is about healing from the many, many years of exploitation and colonialism, well, then that's a really good thing. Who doesn't want to have a more accurate foundation of knowledge for our young people? And who doesn't want to grow into a community that can honor all of our voices? If you have a difference of opinion, I'd love to hear it. The number is 222-1061. I'm going to go to a tune and then I want to flip the script and go to a little Afro-Indigenous music. This is going to be music from Belize and Garifuna community down there. But we're going to go to this little musical interlude, and I'm going to come back on with my phone caller, Malua Beck from Second Chance Services. And we're going to talk a little bit about the homeless policy in Anchorage, what Malua does to be effective, and some other things around just living in Anchorage. Hold on. We'll be right back, everybody. This is Tell George Live 1061 Out North Radio. And let's go to a little Andy Palacio for a musical interlude.
Bay, la segure, amule yele, ya le meri wakeira, segure, bukune. Watina, sitina, uretina, uma lukune na muwa, adi ayuda. Mungi yu baba, babi baby, ni bibano, ni Mulati Nubuseto Gebegiti Nupaseye Menege Hamutina Gase Sotia Ongi Yubaba Pati Baby Nimiwano Nina Inu Amalu Wengi Yenaria Gupungo Luni Basami Luni Niviva Luni Papa Luna Igiara Yabebanaya Watina, Sitina, Wetina, Umanukune Namu, Ayudate, Atagunina. Watina, Sitina, Wetina, Umanukune Namu.
All right. A little Garifuna music, a little Paranda from Andy Palacio. And hey, shout out to Heather Anthony. Heather, so first of all, let me just highlight that Malua Beck is on the phone. We're going to get him on the air in just a minute. So, hey, Malua, hold on a second. But, my wife is Garifuna people. And the Garifuna are the Afro-Indigenous folks from Honduras, Guatemala, and Belize, and other places, but primarily known for being there. And one of the most amazing things that I wanted to highlight by even playing this music is just talking about the African diaspora, the Black community, the inclusiveness, and how big and bold the community is, even beyond what we know in terms of American history, just U.S. history. And let me give it to this perspective before we shift gears. I had a chance of sitting in a Honduras village, an Afro-Indigenous village, a Garifuna village in Honduras, where my son was born. Actually, he's a dual citizen, FYI. And I remember sitting on a beach with a friend who had some Coco Locos. Now, if you don't know what a Coco Loco is, it means you put a little rum into a coconut, or rum and coconut mix, but juice. But this was in an actual coconut, and they put a straw on the top, so it's an alcoholic beverage. And I just wanted to put that out there. Not promoting drinking, but I wanted to just shout out what they did. And I remember one day sipping on a Coco Loco with my friend in the village. And my friend said in Spanish, Puchica, Jorge, yo soy afroamericano de la Central. He said, hey, George, I am African-American from Central America. And this was probably 13 years ago, maybe 14 years ago at this point. And I remember my mind just exploding right there on the beach with the Coco Loco in my hand, thinking to myself, when we look at the diaspora, when we see all the places that the Black community has come to, has grown in across the hemisphere because of the slave trade, because of other interests and other even pre-colonial traveling and exploration from African explorers. When you start getting into the rich history across the hemisphere, and you have a person say, like, yo soy afroamericano de la Central, I'm African American from Central America, that really brings to bear the diaspora of the American the African American experience, even across the hemisphere. So well, I'd love to get into more conversations about that, and we'll do that another time. But right now on the air, I want to bring in one of my friends who represents both the providers for homeless service providers, but he's also one of my African brothers who was born on the continent. Hey, I'm on the phone with Malua Beck. Hey, Malua, are you with me?
I'm with you, George.
Hey, brother, good to hear your voice. You got a good phone. You got a good radio voice. I want to just say that. You said hello. That sounded very nice. But how are you today, sir?
Oh, I'm doing great. I've been very busy. Just got back home. Spending more time with the people that need us. So I'm doing good.
Well, good. I want to get into the work that you do, but also just remember the show is about people, politics, and progress. So, Malua, you've been doing a lot of work in this community with respect to homeless services, and I want to get us into that. But you're also very culturally connected to different groups, to your nation group as well, because people in our community tend to find each other and support. Tell us a little bit about your background and what your relationship with the city is.
Oh, so first of all, just my name is Bolua Beck. I moved from Cameroon to the United States in 2002 and moved directly to Washington, D.C. And then from Washington, D.C., I moved from Washington, D.C. in 2006 to Texas, and then moved with my wife in 2012 to Alaska. Moving to Alaska was one of the greatest adventures that we've done in our lives.
Oh, yeah.
Moving to America was also the greatest move as a young boy, and I've spent more than half of my life in the United States. And I tell people all the time, I appreciate the United States for what they have played in my life. I've learned a lot, but the most part that I learned a lot is moving to Alaska. So the first part, moving to Alaska with me and my wife, is what we experience homelessness. So we moved to Alaska with no family, we didn't know anybody.
You were homeless.
We were homeless.
Right. Okay.
So we happened to experience firsthand of homelessness. But thank God we actually went to a church, and that took us in and gave us a shelter. And they were determined if to put us in a motel or give us some allowance to go to the shelter. The pastor finally decided that they're going to give us a shelter in the building and provided us with assistance, with people who can direct us around, show us and provide us with what we need. So we experience firsthand of what people who are homeless, more than 60% are facing in Anchorage.
Right. And you mentioned having support when you got here as kind of being homeless for your family coming from a church. Shout out to the faith-based organizations who have been doing this work and who are caring for community and welcoming people into our community. And then you also mentioned something that's really important, navigation, right? How to navigate some of these systems. And so you've went from that place as a person who experienced homeless as a new arrival to the city into a space where you were one of the vocal advocates for improving the conditions at API and then moving forward. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got connected to advocacy work and what you did around that API campaign?
So when we moved back, because we experienced the importance of navigation, for somebody to hold your hands and show you around, we had the opportunity for my wife to work, to get a job because somebody was there for us.
Mm.
And I also got a job at Providence. My wife was working with Hope Community Resources, and I was working with Providence uh, Hospital because somebody showed us around. They could tell us where the library is. We had a ride from this faith-based community. We had support. It's just like I looked at it like a case management. That's what I tell people that's what homeless people need. So I finally left Providence, and I started working with young people at North Star Hospital. So I experienced firsthand of what young people, can easily get homeless because we are living in a system that every young native or every young person or minority person goes through that system and is what am I going to say is institutionalized.
Mhm.
So they put you in a system that you live on medication, and when you turn 17, you are out. Nostar can't take you anymore.
Mhm.
So you have that opportunity is either to go to jail or to go to API. And when you turn a certain age, then you have to start living on your own. So just imagine you being all your life having support from people being institutionalized, staying in locked doors in a lockdown facility until 17 with no education, nothing to prepare you for the future. Most people that are living on the street, that's what they've gone through because my clientele right now, I have clients that I met at North Star as kids.
Wow.
Right now, they are my clients. It's either my transitional home or my assisted living as patients.
So let's take us there now. What you just described a couple of facilities, and so you have had firsthand knowledge of being a person who has needed services, to being a person who has helped support the services, to being the head, the founder of an organization that delivers services. Now, tell us a little bit about what you're currently doing, and then we'll get into some other of the political conversations around what we need to be doing here in the city. But tell us what you're doing now, and I also want you to share how effective have you been, and how do you know what you're doing is working or not?
So, what I'm doing right now is to provide support and housing for individuals in need, individuals that are faced with chronic mental health issues, individuals that have been homeless for many, many years. I mean, many years. Working with Anchorage Community Mental Health, I used to work like a case management.
Mm-hmm.
So I would go around and look for clients, and the client's load was huge. Our caseload was huge. So with people with no housing, you have to go to the shelters to look for these people. You go to these shelters, the way the people sleep, they live like pigs. That's what I'll put it. Because it's too much population to keep too many adults in the same building.
When it's
at
too
the same
big,
time.
when it's too big, you feel like
It's too big.
It
It's too
doesn't
big.
give you the ability
So
to
I
have
came
individual
up
dignity.
with an idea
Okay.
to create it small. So 2 people per bedroom. So you focus more on those smaller population, you provide more services, and you will realize what they need. What these individuals need that they have never gotten is love.
Hmm.
We can't continue to treat them like animals because we have to give them something to make them feel like they too can represent. From there, we have to empower them to see if they can be productive citizens in our community. But if we house them in bigger facilities, you give them that no ideologies that they cannot move anywhere. They're just there to go and come in, and they'll be very vulnerable. Sometimes they don't even have something to eat. Sometimes they don't sleep well. So I mean,
Right.
so I created that environment. I worked with DOC and I gave them the option because I did private case management to them. And I told them I want to get a house to experiment how I can continuously work with these individuals. Trust me, those individuals that I started working with 5 years ago still live with me and they live good because they see me every day. They talk to me all the time. They share their problems with me. They have confidence in me right now. They cannot miss the appointments. They ride with me. We eat together. We are like family. So they have no reason to move away from where they are and go back to where they were before. They get their medication on time. I communicate with their providers, so they see me like family.
Right.
So to me, creating smaller facilities like I did, I ran a transitional home with 20 people with 16 people on a 8-bedroom fourplex,
Mhm.
2 people per bedroom. I did that because I discovered that most of these individuals, when they're living in shelters, they miss their appointments.
Right.
Even if they have their medication, they cannot keep their medication because they don't have a safe place to keep their medication. They don't sleep well. They don't eat well. So the medications are less effective.
Right. And
So
Malua, what I'm hearing is that I just wanted to be clear. I'm on the phone, everybody, with Malua Beck from Second Chance Support Services, and we're talking homeless policy, but we're talking with a person who has experienced homelessness firsthand with him and his family. We're talking with the person who's went from that to being able to work in the sector, supporting others, to now becoming the leader of your own organization that does this work, and that's what we're hearing about right now. And Malua, what I also hear, and Malua and I have had just a strong relationship, and a strong advisor to me as well in terms of my homeless policy and framework. But what I hear, and I wanted to be clear, what you just said was, the bigger the institution, the bigger the building, the more bodies we pack in, no matter what you want as the objectives, people will fall through the cracks.
yes, people will fall through the cracks because we don't have enough. I mean, it's just like in your house, George. It's reality. You cannot put 4 kids in a bedroom.
You could try, but there's going to be problems, right? There's going
to be problems. You can try to put 4 to 5 kids in a bedroom. As adults, we can't even leave 5 people in a bedroom.
Right.
There will be problems. And these individuals, when they are living in a shelter, we don't look at certain things like medication, whether they sleep well, whether they take a shower, whether they eat well. We don't consider all that. But until you spend time with these individuals, I spend 16 hours of my day every single day, except Sunday, with these individuals. I play with them, I eat with them.
You're present. You're there.
I'm there. So I have that first class information.
Yes.
If somebody is falling off the crack, it's easy for me to know. So,
well, the smaller is high. That's what I'm hearing is accountability matters, right? And it's the smaller the facility, the more opportunity
effective.
You have to be effective because you have hands-on ability to know people.
Yes. Yes, to know people personally. And once you know them personally, they build that confidence in you.
So, Malua, I got a couple questions. Let me just throw it on here. And we'll get back to this, but I wanted to honor, hey, Carl Jacobs, thank you for tuning in. That's school board member Carl Jacobs. And he just tuned in and said, Malua, how can our community lift up and support the important work you do? So we'll make sure we come back to that, how folks can support the work that you do, and we have a few ideas around that. And I also wanted to shout out. I apologize, Heather, if I say your name wrong, but Heather Soltis. And the question is, how are you funded? Who funds your work? You're a small business. You're established as that, but you mentioned DOC, and just for everybody that may not be familiar with the alphabet soup, DOC means Department of Corrections. So there's some reentry work that you're also involved with. But you also work, and you mentioned this before, your clients, the individuals that you work with, some of them have very deep and difficult mental trauma and other mental wellness issues. Can you talk a little bit about those relationships that you have and how your work is fueled?
Yeah, so some of my clients, most of my clients, I'll say, I'm proud to say this, my facility, I have the most difficult clients in the state of Alaska. So if you come to my facility, those clients that no facility wants, I take them and I manage them because I have that time to spend with them to get to know them. Sometimes it's not all about medication, it's about love.
Right. I was going to say, it's not just you have the time, but you also have the heart.
Yes. So you have to have the time and you also have to have the heart.
Right.
So once you have the time and the heart, everything goes easy. The money that DOC pays for their rent is not enough. I started with like DOC pays $850 a month for rent. I knew that money was not enough. I gathered my clients. We made it possible that we establish a relationship with most food banks and collect food and make sure we prepare food for those people in the transitional home. So the thing that I discovered that some of these clients, for so long, they don't have 3 meals a day.
Right.
And you cannot give somebody medication without 3 meals a day.
Foundational stuff is what you're talking about.
Foundational stuff. You cannot effectively work with somebody without structuring that person. So what the difference between me and the shelter is that my clients are well structured. They know that if you get up in the morning, you take a shower, we do cleaning together, we cook together, we go out if you have to go together. Sometimes we go to Golden Corral, we go to the mountains. I don't care whether the state have to form me or not. We come back, they are not idle moving all over the street.
Right.
And then we come back and we spend time together. You take your medication, you have a reward. If you do something good, if you participate in more work at the home, you have a reward like a pack of cigarettes. So it makes them not even going out.
Right.
So they have everything that they need to have.
And I just wanted to be clear. Malua, you deal with Malua is, again, everybody's George Martinez, Tell George Live, Out North Radio, KONR 1061. I'm on the air with Malua Beck from Second Chance Services, and we're talking about the work that he does and his organization does with respect to providing a second chance for folks who find themselves homeless, who find themselves at outside of the other institutions, who find themselves with different dependency challenges and different levels of trauma in their lives. And Malua mentioned this, and I wanted to just highlight, because it's in your name of the organization, a second chance, that you find the opportunity to give people a second chance to come back into civil society, to come back into a space where they feel that there's dignity, respect, they can build pathways of independence, and they just know somebody cares for them.
Yes.
So I want to shout out Malua Beck, Second Chance Support Services. And before I ask you the question about the current state of politics, the current state of policy, and what your thoughts are, I'd love to hear them. I wanted to just make sure we go back to Carl Jacobs, school board member Carl Jacobs' point. How can people in our community support the work that you're doing?
You know, the way people can support the work that I'm doing is to get together and face reality.
Hmm.
You know, what I've seen in our community and with our leaders is that we make decisions for these people without getting a feeling or without knowing how they feel. So physical feelings. For instance, George, I'll shout out to you for coming to the facility and getting a feeling of how those people are and what they're going through. If we don't come there and see what they're going through, we can't make decisions for them because we don't understand the way they are feeling. But if we get together as a community and keep our political differences aside
Right.
and draft a program that will empower more people to provide the same services like I do
Mm-hmm.
in a small scale, is going to cause us less homelessness in our community. The people are going to be more effective.
And it'll probably cost less money to be
It's going
able
to cost
to.
less money,
Right.
and there's going to be accountability.
Right. Let me just be clear
So
about what I want to make sure that everybody hears what just said. So first of all, thank you for the shout out, Brother Malou. Malou is describing that a couple of years back, Malou invited lots of different people from the community, political leaders, community leaders, and I think at that time I may have been the only person to take you up on the offer to come visit your facility, to walk, to meet people that you work with, and to learn. And you're inviting everyone to continue to learn about what's really happening at a practical level, not just leaving it under newspapers and just the rhetoric, but come visit, learn, see firsthand what happens at any level to get exposed to more information. But then you described something that I think is really important that I believe in, which is accountability matters. And you can get accountability by having a small scattered site model that replicates what you're doing over in a few different locations and a few different spaces, so that this way you meet the capacity of our community, but you don't lose focus of the accountability that's required to be effective for everyone, let alone the people who are receiving those services. Did I capture that correctly?
Yes.
So let me
Yes.
what are your thoughts on, I do not want to put you in a position on the air where you're going to make political enemies. So I'm going to ask you a question that gives the opportunity to help educate the public and any policymaker that may be listening. In my campaign for mayor, I talked about being opposed to warehousing. Now, that may not be the best language, but that's the shorthand that I'll use, which basically means big facilities with a lot of beds are not what we need to be doing. That's not going to work. So what is your gut reaction when you hear about a big campus or a big facility being proposed? What do you think about that as just in general? And what should we be doing instead if you have a disagreement?
Well, I think I disagree with that.
Yeah.
I might be wrong, but I think I disagree with the fact that we want to put people in a warehouse. My first statement is, even pigs, I rear pigs back at home. Even pigs cannot be put in a warehouse. They won't do well. So if we want to see change and see positive change, not only change, let's
Positive
give these
change.
people positive change. Let's give these people the opportunity. Why empowering other people to do what I'm doing? Let's do smaller scales instead of bigger warehouse that will make them continue feeling like they are useless.
Or like you mentioned before, or that the solution is just to institutionalize people,
Yes.
which is not
So let's
correct.
not, because what we're doing right now is either we put them in a motel with no supervision,
Mm.
We send them to shelters. They have to go out early in the morning, come back by 5. Most of them wouldn't even make it by 5. Some of them have to manage their own medications by themselves. And 90% of the time, they can't. I've worked in API that most people who come back to API is because they don't take their medication. They go to the shelter, they don't take their medication. After 3 weeks, they come back to API.
They relapse, basically.
They relapse, and the state end up spending more money. But if you hold me accountable that Molua, you're running a transitional home, you have to give these guys medication morning, afternoon, evening. You have to make sure they take their 3 meals a day. Then we create a structure
Right.
that they will follow. They can be useful citizens in our community.
Well,
There are
because
a lot of things. There are a lot of things that these guys can do. For instance, I have a chicken coop. Josh, you saw it.
yes, indeed.
The chicken coop provides 2 trays of chicken every week that are used in my house. These guys work in the chicken coop. They have an incentive that if you go feed the chicken, you get some incentive. And we use the eggs from the chicken and feed them. So with those kind of programs, can you imagine you having a farm, animal farm somewhere in the valley, and you have like 20 people go there every day or every other day to take care of that? And the checks that we just give them $25 every week, they should work for those checks like an incentive.
What
And
we
by the
talked
time-
about was like a daily dignity jobs.
Daily
Jobs
dignity job.
Right.
The city is talking about the city. We have debt in the city all over. They can pick stuff around for those incentives. By the time they get home, they are tired. They take their medication. They eat. Even 4 hours a day, you will see less people homeless on the street, and you see the city being more safe.
Well, you mentioned something, Malua. I just wanted to echo again. You mentioned that when we go to the smaller model, where we have a series of Maluas doing their work, working with people like yourself, we can hold you accountable, and
Yes.
rather than a faceless bureaucracy, which I think is what we really want to focus on. How do we get to the impact where people are? And you do that by making sure that you have real people that you can hold accountable. I want to bring in Malua. We're almost at time, but Heather Anthony's on the line with us, and shout out again, Heather Anthony. And so I just wanted to read a comment from Heather Anthony. What she wrote was, the government thinks it's cost effective to do big stuff, right? But in the long run, the cost will quadruple because it's going to be a stalemate with so many people in one building and not being able to live on their own. Not a lot of
Yes.
them will go to, and not a lot of them will go to that shelter due to their trust issues and not liking the crowds. Helping them in smaller facilities, one-on-one, will help them gain independence. Remembering
Yes.
that everyone has different needs and issues that need to be dealt with accordingly. That's right on, Heather Anthony. And I think you found common ground with us here today. This is Everybody Tell George live on Out North Radio 106.1 KONR. We're almost at the end of our conversation with Malua Beck from Second Chance Support Services, doing tremendous work in the community. I've had an opportunity to visit Malua's facility and learn more about what Malua is doing. And what I know is that there are others like you who can be brought into the conversation, and we need to have you in the conversation so that we can stay away from warehousing people. None of us believe that warehousing is the right solution. We believe that on this call, that making sure you have a small, highly accountable program that you can see individuals and build the human connection, that's what works as the foundation. I'm on the line with Malua Beck. Anybody, if you have another comment, come on in and tune in. We will continue this conversation at another time. There's a lot going on. And so Malou is one of my homeless policy advisors for the program and for just me out in the community, because I believe that leadership has to go learn, have to have hands-on experiences, and don't just rely on your own voice. You got to work with others who know what they're talking about. Malou Abek knows what he's talking about. But Malou, I wanted to just pivot out because I wanted to also give people, again, this program is about people, politics, and power. And two things. Recently, I had the chance to go visit you at your home to celebrate the graduation of your son, who just graduated high school and is about to head on his way to college. Let's give your son a shout out and let everybody know who your son is, how old he is, and because I was just so proud to see that. What does that mean to you, knowing your journey, to see your children be successful and to have had that happen for your son as well?
Oh, it's a privilege to me, and I thank God for that. To come to the United, that's one of the things that I always look, and I tell people, even my fellow Africans, that we are blessed to be in the United States. It's a privilege for us to be here. To come here after 18 years and see your son graduating from the high school, and not only graduating, he is following my footsteps. Right now, he's working at my facility.
Oh, wow.
Because and he decided that he wants to do nursing because he has seen what I have been doing.
Wow.
So I am proud of that, because we need more young people to step up and be part of the community assistance, so that we can, if the state or the city has to encourage or give an incentive to more young people to encourage them to work with these people with chronic mental health or homeless situation, we should do that, because the more people we educate and encourage to work with these individuals, the more effective it's going to be.
Well, and then shout out to you, Malou, and all of our parents out there who are tuning in, who are committed to doing whatever job they're doing, but also committed to making sure that their children know that there are pathways forward, and to make sure that that they have an opportunity to fill into those footsteps. So you have provided a strong foundation for your children, for your son, to see that work and that heart of community that you have. And I remember when I met your son, I mean, he had such a vision and a very detailed vision of what he wanted to accomplish in his own professional career. That's all coming from home. So shout out to you and your wife, and to all of our families, to all of our families. And I also want to just highlight another thing, Malou. Community is critical. Now, my last minute, a couple of years ago, we didn't do it last year, because last year we were in the middle of a pandemic, and so but I don't even remember when the last time. I don't remember when we did it last, but I know that the African Connect barbecue is coming up this weekend at Valley of the Moon Park, and that's usually a phenomenal time. Great members of the community. Can you describe a little bit about what that activity is and why it's important to you and in this community?
Well, that activity, so the African community population is growing in Anchorage. So the only way we can connect to each other is to come together and share our ideas and see how we can also support, be a part of the solution in the community we live. So they do it every year. Last year, we were unfortunate they didn't do it.
Right. So that was 2 years ago we did it?
All countries.
Okay.
And we invite everybody to come and see what Africans can present, their meals, the games, and what the discussion on how we too can be a part of the community. We don't just want to be just sitting and just getting from the
so
community.
everybody's invited though, and
everybody's invited.
Right.
Just come, because we want to be part of the solution. We want to be part of the solution. So we are trying to bring everybody, because what we've realized, Anchorage is diverse, and it's a one big family.
That's right.
And the only way we can succeed in Anchorage is to put that one big family together and find solutions to our problem and solve it like a family.
I love it, Malua. Malua, you are part of the epitome of community. Your story of how you came to the United States of America, how you wound up through a couple of other places, landing in Anchorage into Alaska, and how you became part of our community from the work that you do, how it comes from your own personal experiences. This is important for all leaders to understand, that there are people with real experiences and we need their voices into the decision-making process. We may not always agree, but disagreeing with dignity is good. And we're at time, Malua. So I want to thank everybody. This is Tell George Live, Out North Radio 1061. Malua Beck from Second Chance Support Services is on the line. And for more information about the Africa Connect barbecue, you can just Google that or visit it on Facebook. And Malua, I want to thank you for being on the line. Got to say goodbye to everybody. We'll talk to you all next Monday. And Malua, I'll talk to you soon. Okay, brother?
All right. Thank you very much, Josh.
Thank
for
you.
having me on the program.
Absolutely. Hey, everybody. This is Tell George Live, Monday Conversations from 6 to 7 p.m. every Monday night on Out North Radio. My time to go. And I'll give you the station ID once again. This is 1061 KONR Anchorage. Tell George Live. I'll see you next week, or we'll talk next week. Thank you, everybody.